So, when you think of a high stakes meeting between the US and Russia, you're probably picturing Washington or Moscow, right? Well, their latest summit took place somewhere totally unexpected, the remote icy landscape of Alaska. In this explainer, we're going to dig into what really happened and try to separate the spectacle from the actual substance. Okay, so let's just jump right in with the question that's on everyone's mind. Alaska? Why on earth would they meet in Alaska? In the world of high-stakes diplomacy, a choice this unusual is never, ever an accident. So, what was the message they were trying to send? You see, the location itself, that was the first major statement of the summit. It was very carefully chosen to project a few different things all at once: power, a bit of pragmatism, and a certain kind of neutrality. And it really boils down to three key things. First, the strategic location. Alaska is the closest the U.S. gets to Russia. They're only about 55 miles apart at one point. Second, it's a huge symbol of strength. It was a way to showcase American power in the Arctic, which is becoming more and more contested. And finally, it was neutral ground. This way, neither side looked like they were caving to the other by traveling to their capital. So after all that careful stage setting with the location, we get to the main event, the diplomatic spectacle. And you have to remember, in meetings like this, what the world sees, the handshakes, the photo ops, the ceremonies, that's often the real story. The welcome for President Putin was, well, it was extraordinary. We're talking the whole shebang: a full red carpet, a 21-gun salute, and a military flyover with not just F-22 Raptor jets, but a B-2 stealth bomber. It didn't take long for U.S. media to call it the most lavish welcome a Russian leader has ever gotten on American soil. But, for all that public pomp and circumstance, the event that got everyone talking the most happened completely away from the cameras. It was a moment that sparked some pretty intense debate and a whole lot of speculation. So just how unusual was this? Well, for about 15 minutes, President Trump invited Putin for a ride in the presidential limo, the Beast. And the number of aides or translators present for that chat? Zero. None. It was just the two of them, completely alone. And you can bet the spin machines fired up instantly. Right after, Russian state TV was out there celebrating, basically boasting that Putin had managed to secure some major concession during that private ride. Meanwhile, U.S. officials, total silence on what was discussed. And that created this information vacuum that critics quickly filled with concerns about, unmonitored negotiations. Okay, so the limo ride totally dominated the headlines, but what was actually on the official agenda? Let's take a look at the three main topics they formally discussed behind closed doors. First up, the huge issue of the war in Ukraine. Now, the official line was that they made progress, but there was no ceasefire, and some pretty unsettling reports started to emerge that a potential peace deal might involve Ukraine actually giving up territory. Next, they tackled the really urgent issue of nuclear arms control. Both sides agreed that, yeah, they needed to have new talks, but they left Alaska with no firm agreement to actually show for it. And finally, of course, given where they were, the issue of Arctic resources came up. And this is a massive topic. We're talking energy exploration, new shipping routes, but for now, it was really just the beginning of a conversation. You start to see a pattern here, right? Vague progress, but no concrete deals. So you take this mix of high drama and these kind of fuzzy outcomes, and it's absolutely no surprise that the meeting sent immediate shockwaves all across the globe. And man, the reactions were all over the map. Russia's state media, of course, framed it as a massive diplomatic victory for Putin. Ukraine, on the other hand, was deeply concerned that its future was being decided for them, without them in the room. European allies started worrying about NATO unity, and back in the U.S., critics argued the summit just gave Putin a level of legitimacy he didn't deserve. So here's the crucial point you've got to understand. The Alaska summit wasn't the end of the story, not by a long shot. In fact, a lot of analysts believe it was just the beginning, like a carefully choreographed opening act for the real negotiations. The term people are using is stage setter, and the idea is pretty simple. This summit wasn't about signing the final deals. It was about establishing a new tone, a new framework for all the difficult, detailed negotiations that are supposed to happen next. And look, we're already seeing the next steps start to fall into place. Ukrainian President Zelensky is now scheduled to visit Washington in the coming days. And at the same time, the U.S. is reportedly getting ready to push a new security guarantees package for Ukraine, which sounds a lot like an alternative to full NATO membership. And at the end of the day, that's the real bottom line here. The true legacy of this summit won't be defined by what happened on the tarmac in Alaska. It's going to be defined by the deals that are or aren't made in Washington, D.C. over the next few months. Which leaves us with the big question. Was this a bold, pragmatic first step towards solving some really complex global problems? Or was it a dangerous performance, one that put spectacle over substance, and maybe set a perilous new precedent? The whole world is watching to find out.